Hey guys, welcome to the NRL Round 17 NRL Betting Trend Report and preview show for the upcoming round, where I go through every matchup, who I think is going to win, the reasons why, what I'm considering betting, plus importantly go through the historical betting data for each of these matchups. Like, what are the odds? What have the odds been? Who's been covering? Who's been winning? How's the total points been going over or under? And what were the lines for those to really help you with your betting decisions going into each and every week. Before we get into this weekend's games, though, I want to quickly recap last weekend's matches. There was only the 5 games, and we had a few blowouts in there as well. Of the 5 games, 3 of them went over the total points line. A couple of teams covered that pretty much by themselves, in the Titans and the West Tigers. The 2 games that went under were the Roosters, Bulldogs, and Rabbitohs Manly game. Home teams won and covered 4 of the 5 games. Obviously, the Melbourne Storm are the only away side to win and cover. So Dolphins let down the home sides there. So far this season, home teams have been very, very profitable. This is the ATS records for every team so far this season. You'll notice home teams have covered 67 of the 121 games. Also, home underdogs are very profitable, covering 34 of the 50 games in that situation. So underdogs have a great record, and so do home teams. Favorites had a good round last weekend. Favorites went 3-2 overall. So 2 underdogs did win and cover. Over the past month, if you've been watching the previous videos, we've spoken about how well underdogs have been performing this season in the NRL. They're winning at around the mid 40% rate so far. Going back over previous seasons, it's generally under the 30% mark. So that number is significantly higher compared to previous years. The underdogs who won and covered were the West Tigers against Canberra, and then the Gold Coast Titans against the New Zealand Warriors. Now, looking ahead to this weekend's game, and before we get into it, I want to make sure you guys know that when I'm going through each one of these games, I'm not making my betting decisions ever because of teams I like or don't like, or who I just think is going to win. It's always based off actual tangible information that you can look at and make decisions from. So using things like the bet finders, where we can go through and analyze the statistics of every single team, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. We can look at their overall averages and also where that stacks up against the league, and also from an attack and defensive perspective, plus going through the betting data, the team data, who's the key ins and outs. So I'll show you guys quickly. Really dive deep into the lineup. So once teams come out on Tuesday night, which will be tonight, we'll go through and update who's the ins and outs for every side, and we can actually go through and match teams up, and depending, if their, key try assist player out, or their players that rack up their run meters are out, and so on and so forth, their line break players, then how is that going to impact that team overall? So these are all things that you can use to make really smart betting decisions. If you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description. So looking ahead to this weekend's games now, obviously with State of Origin coming up tomorrow night, games kick off on Friday night with the Bulldogs versus the Sharks. Sharks come up favorites here, -4.5. They have a really good record against the Bulldogs, winning the past 6 straight. They've also won all of those as the favorite. Sharks have a really good record against the Bulldogs, winning the past 6 straight, all of those being as favorite. During that time, they've covered 4 of the 6 matches. They come up 4.5-point favorites here. Last time they met was round 2 this season at home, and the Sharks were a 10.5-point favorite. So obviously with the Bulldogs' form overall this season, that's brought these teams slightly closer. However, the Bulldogs weren't really that crash hot last week against the Roosters coming off their bye. The Sharks had a little bit of an opportunity to reset. Their month before their bye wasn't really that impressive, but they had a couple of tough matchups and were without key players. The loss against Penrith and Parramatta, and then fell just short against the Dolphins before their bye, and they had a good win against the Broncos. I think this is an important game for them to stay within that top 4. It's a game they definitely can't afford to drop, and I think they'll be good enough to win this game. So do like the Sharks to win. Wouldn't really be super keen on the -4.5, but I do like them on the money line. So I'm aiming to look for if I can get them at the 165, 170 mark. That would be my ideal bet in this game. So I'm just going to monitor the price leading up to the game on Friday night and see if we can get close to that 170 mark. Or worst case scenario, if it kind of hovers around that $1.50, $1.55 mark, and even like if it shortens a little bit, then I'll be trying to shop for a -4 line, or if I can get -3.5. So this is one where kind of want to shop for the best line to get the best price there on the Sharks. But I think they're good enough to be winning this game against the Bulldogs. Total at 46.5. I have no real lean on the total in this game. At 46.5, it is 6 points higher than the total was earlier this season, but that has been on the back of a little bit more high-scoring games so far over the past couple of weeks in the NRL. But just staying away from the total in that one. There's no real lean either way. Both sides are strong defensively. Bulldogs currently ranked the number 2 defense, and the Sharks ranked 5th. Warriors versus the Broncos. Both teams really in need of a win going into this game. Warriors obviously got hammered by 60 points last week. Broncos have been in a little bit of rough trot, losing their past 3. They come up favorites here, -3.5 against the Warriors, who have won 2 of the past 3 at home versus the Broncos. However, Broncos have won 3 of the past 4 overall. So it's kind of a little bit of a tough spot for the Broncos. In need of a win, but Warriors going to be without Sean Johnson. That definitely tips the edge into their favor. I'd expect the Broncos to be winning this game. It's definitely a game that they can't afford to drop. They're the better attacking side and better defensive side. However, their just form has been really lacking. However, you kind of say the same thing for the Warriors. So lean towards Broncos to win, but probably not a betting proposition. I just don't have a ton of confidence in them at the moment. And especially in a matchup where the home team has proven to perform the best, winning and covering 4 of the past 5. 6 of the past 8 between these two sides have gone under. With the total of 46.5, I'd be leaning towards the under. I have my number at 44.5, so a couple points lower than the official total. And this number is higher than their past 3 meetings. Newcastle versus Parramatta. The Knights come up favorites here, -1.5, even though Parramatta have won and covered the past 6 versus them. They're at home here, which is a fairly big advantage, even though it hasn't really troubled the Eels. They've won the past 3 trips there, going back to 2020. This is a kind of a tricky matchup. Off past history, I immediately just lean towards the Eels. They should be good enough to get the job done here. My concern with Parramatta, though, is they're the worst defensive side in the competition, conceding almost 29 points a game, ranked 17th, concede the most tries. They concede the least meters per point at 57.3. So a lot of key areas for improvement for them defensively. However, Newcastle are the worst attacking side in the league. So kind of evens it out a little bit. And then on the opposite side, the Eels aren't really that strong attacking, only averaging just over 20 points, and the Knights are ranked 8th defensively. So there's not a great deal between them. I have this game very close to a pick'em, but off past history, I'm leaning towards the Eels to win. I think there's just been a little bit too much line movement from their past meetings. You'll notice the last 3 pretty much the Eels have been about that converted try line, -6.5, 6.5, -7.5. And the last 2 they've won in dominant fashion, 43-12, 39-2. And I think they're a good enough side to win this game. Don't have a ton of faith in the Knights attack. So Parramatta can just be half decent defensively. They'll be good enough to keep the Knights attack out, and that'd be enough to win the game. I haven't decided whether I'm going to take the money line or the +1.5 yet. However, at +1.5, I'd go with the $2. However, if I can get to the +2.5, there's a little bit of money for Newcastle. We can get +2.5, then I'd take that over taking, 205-ish for the Eels to win outright. Storm versus the Raiders. Raiders coming off that big loss last week against the West Tigers on Sunday. Storm have the extended rest playing the early game last week, and they're at home here. So quite a few positives there in favor of the Storm. This is a game in recent years Canberra have definitely gotten up for. They've covered 4 of the past 5, won 2 of the past 3 against Melbourne. However, Storm have won 6 of the past 8. So overall, Storm been better. However, Canberra have been covering. This line back out to +14.5. Higher than their past 2 meetings. They met in round 24 last season. The Storm were 12.5 point favorites. Their previous meetings, that number has been around this same mark. Storm should win this game and win it fairly comfortably. Melbourne overall this season haven't really been blowing teams out. They've been winning games by smallish margins, just doing enough to win. This is a game that could be a good for and against points differential booster for them, especially at home here. Canberra, one of those teams that prior to this season starting, they were, written off, definitely a bottom four side, and they started the season well, and then it's kind of just been a bit of a slow and gradual decline since then, and I feel like it's just starting to catch up to them. They're ranked in the bottom half of the league in most key performance indicators, and teams like that shouldn't be beating Melbourne in Melbourne. So confident Storm get the job done. I'm not super keen on the -14.5 though, so we're looking at potentially other ways to play this game. Most likely looking at the try scorer markets in conjunction with the Storm to win outright. You generally get some good odds about team that should win the game, especially if they're going to win by a fairly big margin, and players to score tries. One thing that I look at when analyzing, try scorer markets is going through the tries by position. So looking at where teams can see tries and where teams score their tries, and look for key players to take advantage of that. And then also going through the try scorer trends for every game. So going through, looking at, this is what it'll look like for the upcoming round, and looking through which players in form and scoring tries. So that's how I play those markets. And this looks pretty much an ideal game for that kind of situation. Dragons versus Dolphins. St. George are 1.5 point favorites here. So another close game. It's pretty much a pick 'em though on the money line. So this line could easily switch the opposite way. You'd be getting $2 for the -1.5 here. I'm surprised St. George are favorites here. Dolphins are the better attacking side and better defensive side. Haven't seen team lineups come out yet for this matchup. But I don't see any reason why Redcliffe don't win this game, even though they are on the road and the home team has won and covered all three matchups. There's only been the 3 meetings between these two sides. Redcliffe have won the last 2 in dominant fashion. 38-0 earlier this season in round 2, and then 26-12 during the mid part of last season. Last time they met, the Dragons were 1.5 point favorites, and I genuinely feel like the Dolphins have done enough to, start pushing that line further into their favor. And, Dragons were one of the sides who were favored to get the wooden spoon this season. And Dolphins are a team, fighting for definitely a top 8 spot this year. And this is a game that I don't think they can afford to drop. So do like Redcliffe. They're a team that I've made a lot of money off backing them this season. I feel like this is another good opportunity where they're being slightly undervalued. Penrith versus the North Queensland Cowboys. They met in round 8 this season. It's not all that long ago. That was in Townsville, and the Panthers won 26-20. Didn't cover the spread. The Cowboys covered that one, and the Cowboys have covered 3 of the past 4. But this is a game Penrith should win, and should win comfortably. It's not really an ideal spot here for North Queensland. On the road, number of key players backing up from Origin as well, going against a Panther side who, for the most part, are very hard to beat, especially at home. Both sides come into this off the bye, so they'll be fresh coming in, but expect Penrith to win, and win fairly comfortably. The past 3 between these two sides have gone over the total points line, total up to 46.5 for this match. Slightly higher than their previous meetings as well, which have all gone over. So there's definitely been a bit of adjustment to the odds for that. I have this number at 46 for this game. So pretty much bang on with what the current total points line is. But do like Penrith to win, and I'd slightly be leaning towards a high scoring game. Cowboys ranked 13th defensively, and they're also ranked 17th in first half points conceded. So potentially just looking at the numbers for this game on the side here, Penrith are the number 1 scoring first half side, averaging 14.9 points. And the Cowboys are the worst defensive side in first half, conceding 14.3 points. So a potential first half line or Panthers team total to go over in the first half will be my most likely bets in this game, as I think they get the job done, win it comfortably, and probably put the Cowboys away early. Roosters versus Tigers, final game of the round. Another game with a big favorite. Roosters $1.17, -15.5 points. Tigers coming off a big win last week against Canberra. Now face a side that they're pretty much last 4 games have all been big margins that they've lost by. Roosters have won and covered the past 7 versus Tigers, and you'll notice the line is exactly what it was last time they met in round 26 last season. But we've seen double-digit lines in the past 3 meetings. I think the Roosters win this game, but I don't think there's really any value at all in them to win the game. The player that I do like in this matchup is the over 52.5. I feel like it's getting close to probably like the peak number where I'd be a little bit worried about playing the over, but I feel like this is going to be a really, really high scoring game. The Roosters are the #1 attacking side in the league, and even though Tigers, aren't great in attack, they did put up 48 points last week. And in the last month, aside from the game against the Titans, their other 3 games over the past month have all been really high scoring games, and this one sets up as a high scoring matchup as well. Roosters could put up 40 points easily on their own in this game, I feel like. And that'll go a long way towards pushing it to go over that 52.5 number. So that's the way I'm leaning in the last game of the round. So to quickly recap all the matches, like the Sharks to beat the Bulldogs, lean towards the Broncos against the Warriors, but no confidence in that game. I feel like both teams are very, very hard to trust at the moment. I like the Eels as the underdog against Newcastle. Storm Raiders, like Storm to win and potentially some try scorer bets in that game. Dragons versus Dolphins. I like the Dolphins to beat the Dragons. And then Panthers, Cowboys. Penrith should be winning that game. And Roosters versus Tigers, like the over 52.5 in the final game of the round. That's how I'm looking at playing it. If you want to get all my bets for the round, check the link in the description. Plus, that's also how you can get access to the bet finders for the NRL and any other sport that you want to bet on that I have all this information for. I've been building these out over the past 12 years doing this full time. And earlier this year, I made it available to everyone to use to help level up their betting. So definitely check it out.